I've been learning about myself recently that I am a person that really appreciates like a challenge. I make things harder for myself than maybe they need to be. I just kind of like to suffer, but just a little bit, so it's a good story in the end. And there is no better proof of that than the wedding gift that I received about 8 years ago from my husband, which is a 1981 Yamaha 400 XS Special. Which is a very beautiful, very classic motorcycle. And it cost about $500 at the time. And I have ridden the absolute shit out of that motorcycle. I've taken it to Niagara Falls. I've taken it to Massachusetts, to New York multiple times. And only one time did I ever have to almost abandon it on the side of the road after trying to bump start it in the rain for 2 hours in a parking lot. Just once. That's a motorcycle that a year after owning it, we've realized that there was a hole in the engine about the size of a silver dollar that had clearly been there for a very long time that the previous owner tried to JB weld over, which to my understanding is pretty much like putting silly putty over a hole. And the thing still ran for an entire year after that while I was riding it all these places. So, I'm lucky enough to ride with this amazing group of women called the Rita. Some of them are here. And we take tons of trips. We go camping a lot. And last year we went to a camping trip in New York called Northbound Moto. It was about 3.5 hour ride up. And before we left, of course, we gave the bike a check over. My husband and I, he's very mechanically inclined. I very much am not. But I can like troubleshoot on the fly. That's kind of my skill. And he noticed that there was like a little bit of a crack in the exhaust pipe on the front. So on a motorcycle, the exhaust, that you can see the pipe on the side, but it actually comes up and attaches in the front. So there are these two like, pipes that are about this big around that like come up the front and attach. And he's found a crack and he was like, okay, I think it's gonna be okay. This bike is a tank, it'll probably be fine. But let's patch it. Send you on your way, like, keep me updated, if you have to do anything. Would not be the first time that we had to, like, patch something on the road, right? So we ride up with the women, me on my little 400 XS. That's, for people that don't know, 400 is not a lot of power. We're on the highway, everybody's on these big 1200 Harleys, and I'm like, like, no windshield, bike is shaking. It's very physically exhausting to ride a bike that small, that far, especially on the highway. But we get up there fine. We have an amazing weekend. We, take rides. We go swimming in watering holes. It's really great. And so on the way home, we get moving and we're riding. And like I start to smell like something that's like a little rich, right? And this is a bike that I know everything about this bike, right? You got to know it at any sign of trouble, what's going on. You're like one with the bike, right? It's very similar, I would imagine. I've never ridden a horse, but I imagine it's like riding a horse to some extent. So I'm like, that's a smell. It's not quite right. It's not the right smell. Now I understand that it's like a rich smell, right? Too much gas, too much gas. And so we stopped to get a break at a Sheetz outside of Williamsport. I remember that very specifically. I can picture it. If you've ever been to Williamsport, you've probably stopped at this Sheetz. It's the one right on the river, right? And I'm like, I'm gonna take a look. Let's see what's going on. We look at the bike, and in the exhaust, there's not only a crack now, there's a hole, right? Okay, so it's like about an elbow-shaped piece, right? If you imagine like an elbow shape, it's only this big around, but about this much is gone, like kind of just on this side. There's just a really big chunk missing. I don't know how it's still running, but it did. And I send my husband a video and I'm like, hey, there's a hole in the exhaust pipe. What do I do? And I send him a video of the whole thing and he calls me immediately, obviously. And he goes, Rita, that's not a hole, it's disconnected. There was not only like the inside corner was missing, but there was a crack that went all the way around to the other side of the hole. Literally, the two pieces were no longer connected to one another. And that can lead to all sorts of problems, right? Like you're getting the wrong amount of pressure. There's like, you can lose power. There's tons of issues with, it's a very important piece is what I'm trying to say. So I'm like, okay, well, we got to get this home. We're 2 hours from home. he goes, can somebody go to a hardware store? Is there a hardware store? I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll Google it. My friend Chelsea jumps on her bike, runs to a hardware store. We all just kind of sit around and wait and eat snacks until she gets back. And she brings us some wire. And we then proceed to take about 10 minutes to wire the exhaust pipe onto the frame of the bike. And it's not to like put it back together. The purpose of wiring the pipe to the frame is literally so that in the case that the entire thing breaks off, it does not run under the motorcycle and crash me. Like, that was the reasoning. So let's make sure that the pipe is safely secured to the frame of the bike. So that's what we did. It looks gnarly, but I'll be damned if I did not have any problems at all getting it home from that point. It started right up. We rode it home, and it has been sitting in my garage since then because I really took that as a lesson that I really don't want to suffer anymore. Thank you.